Amazon với mức giá cực kỳ ưu đãi như đăng ký brand với USPTO, từ Helen Hand, từ trên Scout, Logistics và Warehouse. Xem hình thông tin chi tiết dưới phần mô tả nhé.
Today, we're going to bring one of the Amazon industry's foremost experts on artificial intelligence. He uses so many different kinds of software. So he's going to give you guys all of the best AI tools that you should be using to help your Amazon business. How cool is that? Pretty cool, I think. Do you want to be able to sync your listings that you create in Helium 10 to your Amazon account in one click, including being able to sync subject matter, which you're not able to even edit now in most listings on Amazon? You're going to want to use Helium 10 Listing Builder. Make sure to find out how to use Listing Builder by going to h10.me/listing builder. That's h10.me/listing builder. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Serious Sellers Podcast by Helium 10. I'm your host, Bradley Sutton, and this is the show that's a completely BS-free, unscripted, and unrehearsed organic conversation about serious strategies for serious sellers of any level in the e-commerce world. We've got somebody who's been a serious seller for years here, Steve Simonson, back on the show. How's it going, Steve?
It's going great. Yeah, I was just wondering, I've definitely put up some serious numbers, but I'm quite irreverent, so sometimes not always serious in the boardroom, but yeah,
exactly,
serious numbers. But also, I like to crack a joke or two.
There, and that's what we like. So, we're not going to go too much into Steve's backstory. So, if you guys want to check that out, episode 38 is a good one to see some of Steve's backstory. But I brought you on because I've been seeing you pop up a lot, and you're good at email marketing too, and you've been marketing to me for some webinars and stuff that you've been doing lately on AI, and that seems to be all the rage. And I'm one of the ones who hasn't really completely, dove into it, and like let it take over my life. Like I see some people, I definitely see the advantages. I see the disadvantages, sometimes too, with relying too much on it. So I was like, you know what, let's bring an expert on. And let's just talk about, first of all, like how you got passionate about it. Like what was it about it that just, because this is not, it's not like you've been doing AI for 10 years. You have a lot of specialties, be it sourcing and logistics and a lot of different things. What made you so giddy about the AI phenomenon, I guess?
Giddy is a good word for it. Well, if you look back at my background, and likely in episode 38, we talked about my fascination or love for systems. Like I'm a huge systems guy. The system runs the business, the people run the system. This is right out of the E-Myth. So my thoughts are like, how do you make great systems? And for more than a decade, probably nearly 15 years, we've been using some levels of machine learning. This is a precursor to AI. Machine learning is like, hey, take all of your reviews and detect the sentiment of those reviews. And then the ones that are positive, try to extrapolate some of the keywords, like make a word cloud out of the positive sentiments, or the same with negative sentiments. So you can use machine learning and you train it to, this word is good, this word is bad, right? It's very, I would say, boring and takes a long time, and it costs a lot of money. But when you have lots of call center call records, or lots of reviews, or lots of inbound data that is more than a human can do, machine learning makes sense. So that, from my perspective, that history of how do we make the bots do more work, that's always been part of my DNA. And so, frankly, in November, when OpenAI kind of started making a bunch of noise, we said, like, I don't know if this is a Beanie Baby fidget spinner thing. Like, is this just some fad, or is this real? And frankly, I was skeptical. I'm like, how could it be? But after a couple of weeks, I'm like, this is not the invention of the automobile, right? And mass, production capabilities. This is not the PC. This is not even the advent of the internet. This is like fire. Man discovers fire, or man invents the wheel. That's how pivotal this is for humanity, for better or worse. The train's on the tracks, to use a historic metaphor, and we better get on board or get out of the way.
I've had a few people on here talk about some of the basic things that can be done You know, like you mentioned it before, that was probably the first thing that people thought to do is, hey, let's take Helium 10 review insights and let's download the reviews and let's try and get a sentiment here. And other people have been using it to get, like, you know, maybe some different brand ideas, or I heard of a couple of people do it for potentially even product research. But now we're in, you know, May, June of 2023. What are some maybe next level things that people should do outside of just these basics here?
The first thing is there are many ways of viewing AI, and I tend to look at it in tiers, right? So tier one is the basic tier that we all start with, which is, how do I use this tool, right? There are many ways to use technologies, and the first is, you know, it's like, I've got a nail, where's a hammer, right? You don't want to use a screwdriver to try to hammer the nail, so find the best tool for the job. So some of the things that I love to do, and this may be fun for you, Bradley, just this past week, I cloned my voice, and then we started having transcriptions of various things that I've written, tried to be, you know, read in my voice. And the intonation, it's not perfect just yet, but it's so close that you're like, oh, in 6 months, this is going to be pretty amazing. Yeah, so that's 11labs.io if anybody wants to check that out. Spectacular. And by the way, they're actually so good at reading. Their bots are not like I won't throw people under the bus, but there are many people who use text-to-speech tools that are very robotic, and they don't read with any level of, I'll just say, humanity. But if you go to 11 Labs and you go to their podcast, it's now, by the way, one of the top 50 on Spotify, at least in the business area. They're having their bots read like old, out of copyright things like Alice in Wonderland or old news articles from 1899. And the different voices they select are amazing. And you can then start to say, depending on your line of business, obviously for a podcaster like yourself, lots of applicability, whether it's cloning your own voice or reading, you know, the thing in a new voice, many, many fun things you can do with text to speech. Really extraordinary.
Everybody now has heard of ChatGPT and Midjourney, and maybe, you know, we can probably talk a little bit about that if you have some strategies there. But what are a couple more things that, you know, have maybe flown under the radar for most Amazon sellers that you think are useful?
Well, one of the things that excites me the most is the idea of taking that tier one tool and turning it into an automation, right? So an automation would be, so as an example, we have the ability to create SOPs that write themselves, right? So you just go to a screen, you type in, you know, how to add an item to Amazon Seller Central, or how to create a new class in QuickBooks. You click the magic AI button, and it literally writes the SOP for you, right? So that's a tool, high use, right? If you need to hammer a nail, let's get the big one out, and it takes that blank screen and destroys it. Like, that's the worst thing, is the blank screen. But level 2 is things called Auto GPT or Baby AGI. These are types of terms you may start to hear. LangChain is another thing where you can actually stitch together conversations, which allows more contextual referencing of the AI. And I won't bore you with the details unless we get into it. Or vector databases, which allow a lot more scanning of internal data sources. So imagine everything at Helium 10, all of that knowledge baked into one vector database, whether it's videos, audio, text, right? You could even have, you know, Word and Excel, whatever you wanted. And then this thing, you could just chat with it about what do I need to know about Helium 10 internal or external, or the tool, or, you know, an individual product. Extraordinarily powerful. So Baby AGI has now several iterations, and Auto GPT will take that tool, that hammering process, and turn it into, gosh, I've got a little bot that's running around doing this for me, without being API driven, without being Zapier driven. It's just like, hey, go in, check this inbox, and then, you know, start to create replies. You can put in a human layer of validation if you wish, until you feel comfortable with it. But at a certain point, you'll go, yeah, this thing is just going to go to, you know, this software. It's going to grab these stats. It's going to add them to this, you know, database or spreadsheet, and then it's going to carry on with its life, eliminating a lot of this, what I would call low value add work. And it means the people can be augmented and their capabilities extended into more value add work.
Interesting. Interesting. Now you mentioned, systems, and then you also mentioned the outside here what you're just talking about, the SOPs. This video you had sent me about, I think it's called SOP box. You had this like kind of cool flow where I'm assuming that, hey, this is like, hey, I'm an Amazon seller. I need to make sure that I'm not the only person in my company who knows how to do this. I hire, staff, instead of, taking a full day to write out, some crazy PowerPoint with 1 million screenshots that, for every single process that we do. You found a way that can kind of like make this a quicker process. Can you walk us through, first of all, tell us what that program is, and maybe walk us through a sample process that we could create.
Yeah. So first, it is so exciting to me because, like I say, I hate the blank page. And really every time I'm at an event and I talk to sellers and they talk about some problem, often it's, HR related or something broke or some system, failed. And I'm like, well, where's it written down? Well, I made a video about it, or, I haven't got there yet. Like the original sin is the lack of creation, right? And so we want to eliminate that and allow people to document with simplicity, like super easy. So literally just about anything that is public facing. And by the way, this works on the chat GPTs or even Bard to a lesser extent. Bard is not quite as sophisticated at this moment, but it's coming for chat GPT quick. You can just type in, how to add, an item, or how to delete this, or how to do, whatever function you're trying to do. And if it's a public facing documentation, there's a high probability the system will just give you a step-by-step process. We take it a step further from that documentation and we add process. And we say, you know what, if you're closing your books once a month, that's a checklist of 8 or 10 steps. Let's link the SOP for the new people who don't know how to do it, but the existing people, they just need a checklist and they need to be reminded. So we set recurring schedules. That becomes, so document and then process. The operationalization is where the payoff is. Now you have accountability. You've made life easier for everybody who works in the company because all of these processes can be shared amongst, the entire company and assigned to individuals. So the payoff in management and for founders, we often lose sight of this because we're like, it's in my head. I see how it should be done. The payoff is accountability, like reports that show, here's what happened. Here's how productive. Here's the variance on this task between team members or between, each individual day. That is, it's a powerful thing. So systems are so necessary, especially as we head into times that are maybe uncertain financially. We got to get tight and we got to have our processes down. So having this kind of baseline is really important in my opinion.
What about imaging? Like what are, be it Midjourney, be it something else, what can Amazon sellers do? Because, when some of these like Dolly first came out, like you can't even make a human face. It was like a month. It reminded me of the Goonies movie. What was his name? The guy that, hey, you guys, from the Goonies. I forget his name, but I know. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. But that's like how the, when it tried to create humans, that's how it would look. But where are we now here in the middle of 2023 with how Amazon sellers can use AI on the imaging side? Like, are we at the point where we can go ahead and start creating some lifestyle images or perhaps even parts of A+ content or creating an Amazon post? Where are we at?
Anh chị đang bán hàng trên Amazon. Skyrock cung cấp các dịch vụ dành cho các nhà bán hàng trên Amazon với mức giá cực kỳ ưu đãi như đăng ký brand với USPTO, từ LIệN, từ cho Scout, logistics và warehouse. Xem hình thông tin chi tiết dưới phần mô tả nhé.
For sure. We're not 100% there, but we are well on our way. Within a year, almost everything that you do, you can do with the AI assist, right? Obviously, you need your product to be able to be, some base photography that is going to then be inserted into lifestyle or what have you. But the complexity and the geometry that has advanced just in the past, 6 weeks is unbelievably good. And the level of complexity, there's still errors. Let's not kid ourselves. But
sure.
I'm always I like to look ahead, right? What's coming? Because if that trend, and this is, again, not a Beanie Baby trend, this is a life is changing trend. If that trend is going to get better and more sophisticated, I'll get good at it now. And then a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, I'll be well poised to maximize it. And I can say unequivocally, whether it's Midjourney or Stability AI, these are diffusion engines that are exceptional. And for sure, for social content, you can make spectacular images, certainly lifestyle images. And by the way, you know, sellers forget that, you know, we think the star of the show is the product, right? That's because we're egocentric, or, you know, we just want to make the sale, right? And that's fine. But the customers couldn't care less about our logo. They couldn't care less about really the product, you know, how it looks. They want the benefit that the product gives them. So imagery should be, you know, the product is a, you know, I use this and then I felt like that. And so that's where you want your imagery to, you know, start to move to that emotion, that, you know, evoking of, you know what, I used to hate going camping and now I have this particular, you know, tool or, you know, tent or whatever the product is. Now my life is pleasant. So I've got this beautiful sunset photo of, you know, a tent over, you know, the mountainside or whatever it is. All of these can be created. Text to image is spectacularly powerful. We use Midjourney constantly. And when it comes to Amazon posts or any social, I would say spectacular results. In fact, one of my kids, my son, is starting a business, and they're going to have, you know, basically an entire AI setup to create multiple daily posts that are kind of brand centric. So you train the AI about your brand. Here's our values. Here's our product selection. Here's all the things about it. And this is a really important part of the framework, by the way. In ChatGPT, if you train your brand or train a conversation about your brand and then start asking the AI about your brand and say, well, you know, what's a good elevator pitch for this brand? What would be some good target markets for this brand? What's a good avatar within that target market? You can then start to realize, you know, this particular avatar, they don't care that my teapot, you know, is made of stainless steel grade number 39, whatever. They care that the tea comes out hot, right? Yeah. And I have a pleasant morning. And so you make that the focus. And AI is well equipped to deliver all of that and much more, including, you know, photo studio level replacement, frankly.
What else? What's some specific things that somebody listening to this right now, you know, without having to go and you know, learn how to do something for 1 week, but they could literally hop off this podcast, sign up for something, you know, and then within 1 hour, they're going to have this result. Like what should an Amazon seller right now do? Like which one should they start with right now? Should it be ChatGPT? And then can you give them like some homework? I want everybody listening to this, like to take what Steve is going to tell you. And this is something that can bring your Amazon business value, and you'll be able to do it within 1 hour of listening to this. I'm putting you on the spot here, but can you think of something?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about, so every seller should be building a list, or an email list, right? This is something that it's a little harder to do on Amazon, but with the right methodology and certainly, you know, broadening into other channels, you can get an email list. Regardless of how big that list is, you do not need a 10,000 or 100,000 person list to start interacting with your customers, right? So it doesn't matter if it's 50 or 100 or 500. Let's get that thing going. But use the AI to get smart about it. So one idea, right? And I like to R&D stuff. Bradley, you're probably familiar with the term R&D in the traditional sense, which is fine, which means research and development. In my world, it means rip off and duplicate. So let's get to it. That's how we do it. So the first thing, you can go to ChatGPT and just type in, you know, what are some well-known effective frameworks for email marketing, right? Instead of us writing the emails, let's get some frameworks. And it will bring back things like ADA and BAB and PASS, and it'll explain what those are, which is essentially like, hey, ADA is attention, interest, desire, and action. So when you say, I want to write an email in the ADA framework, it's going to follow that framework, right? And that gives you, you know, kind of the baseline, like how are we going to structure these emails? We're going to use one of the blueprints that we're familiar with. The second is, you know, hey, what's a good target audience for, I like to use the example of garden hoses, right? Who are customer audiences for garden hoses? And it will tell you, hey, You know, you got your people who own homes, they're homeowners, right? You got your garden enthusiasts, you got your do-it-yourselfers and, you know, pet owners and commercial customers. It's going to tell you the types of customer segments. And as I mentioned earlier, a great idea then is like, well, what's a great customer avatar for a garden enthusiast? Give me that avatar. And it will give you chapter and verse. You know, here's a name, here's an age, here's, you know, where they're located and what's their occupation and, you know, what are their interests, what are their goals and challenges. And this is a really important point about marketing. We get, I would say, distracted by the simplicity of search term sale, right? That's kind of the Amazon method. But as we all evolve, and make no mistake, whether or not we think we're evolving, the marketplace is evolving, right? And the sophistication of our competition is evolving. By the way, your competitors that used to struggle with, let's say, you know, native language in the home market, whether it's German or Spanish or English, they no longer have that problem because AI is really good at language, really good at language. So literally you can type in, let's just use Mandarin as an example. You can type in, you know, what is the English way to make, you know, actually do all the conversation I just mentioned in Mandarin and then say, now write an English email that accomplishes this objective. So really, really high use case across the world. So anyway, once you have that avatar, then you might say, okay, now give me a logical email sequence over the next 6 months to take a cold lead who is a garden enthusiast and meets this avatar and then turn them into a rabid fan. And it will literally give you a 6-month plan, you know, month by month, you know, week by week. Here's what we're going to start doing. And then you start creating emails for each of those parts of the sequence. And obviously, the next thing you can simply say is, you know, one of the things I like to do is I like to learn from the greats. So I would next say something like, who are the 10 top direct response marketeers of all time, right? Technically, they're marketers, but I'm a Disney fan, so I call them marketeers. But it'll come back with a list like Dan Kennedy and David Ogilvy and Claude Hopkins and all the greats. And then you just pick a voice and you go, you know what? In the voice of David Ogilvy, write a cold email for the introduction of my brand. You know, we'll just call it Hose Guy from the founder, you know, Luke Skywalker, and use the BAB framework. And it will write that perfectly. Even if there's a small, you know, edit here or there, it's far superior than the average output that I've seen. So that's kind of an R&D a case study. And by the way, you do the same thing. Give me 10 email headlines with emojis, and now you have everything, right? You've got all of your emails, you've got all of your planning, you've got your avatars. You're now a marketing. You just became a CMO, or the bot, the AI became the CMO.
All right, what else can you talk about? So like some of this stuff, I'm so new, I don't even know the questions to ask because like I'm not even sure what's possible. So like everything you're telling me is all education to me, as I'm sure it is for much of our audience. So what should I be asking? Like what should we be talking about here along these lines of AI?
Well, I'll give you two things. There's one is that I like to say it's all in the prompt. So if you conjure up your favorite Happy Gilmore scene, it's all in the prompt. It's all in the prompt. He had a funny scene. And my message to you is that the more sophisticated your prompt is, the better your output is. So when I started programming computers when I was 12 years old, the 7th grade teacher said, garbage in, garbage out. They taught us the acronym, GIGO. And so if you have typed in prompts and you got garbage back, it was probably a garbage prompt, frankly. So how do you advance the prompt? And the answer is you just start thinking about it as a formula. You know, like, hey, please generate this type of content, right? Twitter post for my target audience, right? Whether it's an avatar or a general audience that highlights the benefits of my blank and encourages them to take this whatever desired action, right? So it's a formulaic approach to prompting. And this applies to anything. You know, can you create a email or blog post that addresses the common pain points of a garden enthusiast and positions my Hose Guy, product as the solution? Now, the best part of this, and I referenced it earlier, but I want to be sure you guys are clear about it. If you create a conversation in GPT-4 that conversation thinks back or remembers all the prior parts of that conversation. So each conversation you start, you should be appending with a mission. You know, AI is just a giant autosuggest. It actually has no intelligence. The more, just like on Amazon or Google, the more characters you type in, it keeps trying to fill in what it thinks you're going for. And that's all AI is. It's a giant autosuggest. So the more in the prompt you're extending, the more precise and the more deliberate those results will be, because you've given it more to work with. And the more you consider that autosuggest is not actual intelligence. It's just kind of a database of knowledge, and it's on a bell curve like anything else, right? The fringe data is ignored, and it's delivering the bulk of what it considers the available data. It can't score whether it's right or wrong. It just goes, most people say this. So if you have a product that goes against the flow, you may often get bad replies from AI. But does that help? You kind of see where I'm headed that way?
Yeah. You know, speaking of bad results, speaking of hallucinations and different things, what are some ways to prevent this? What are some common mistakes that you've seen people make with AI where they probably get frustrated? Oh, this is useless, but no, it's because you're the useless person. You're the one who's doing something wrong. So, like, what are some common mistakes of newbies who are getting into AI, and how can we avoid them?
Well, it's funny because I have this conversation frequently because people have used it once or twice, and they're like, even myself, I had it. I just went to ChatGPT and I said, give me a bio for Steve Simonson. And I might have even included the word entrepreneur. And it came back and it said, you know, Steve's a founder of, you know, e-commerce companies and a speaker and an author, and went on. And I'm like, okay, so far it's not terrible, although the author feels a little weird. And then it gave the birth date, which was wrong, every part of it. And then it gave 2 books that I had written, which I have not written, nor do the books exist. And it gave me some lifetime award from some organization that although I've heard of the organization, I'm unaware of receiving such award. So that prompt was not enough. Now, the more I augmented that prompt with certain details, it got better. But my message to most everybody right now is the hallucinations exist not because of things that we can control. It's just because the data set is so large and not yet well refined. The more an individual conversation becomes granular and precise, like you could say, no, that is not right. Stop using that information. Again, just in this conversation, here's the facts. Then it will use those facts. But it does not like permeate through the rest of the internet, right? That's not how it works. So I would encourage people to be patient. I would say that like doing a prompt, which is like a linear thing where you type in something and the thing comes back to you. Amazing stuff. By the way, there's a site, forgive me because I don't remember the exact address, but there's a site you can just go have conversations where you speak into your computer and then the bot speaks back with the personality and voice of these celebrities. So there's John F. Kennedy, there's Elon Musk, and they really are different conversations. John F. Kennedy's, you know, polite, very political, right? Elon Musk, I ask it like, what are your hobbies? And it's like, you don't have a better question than that? Come on. I'm a busy guy, right? So crazy iterations of, you know, these personalities that you can train. And one that I wanted to share with you, Bradley, in terms of a workflow, and I think it applies to any marketeer. So anybody who creates content for video purposes or for audio purposes, you have a big library or potentially have a big library of audio content. And by the way, it doesn't matter if that content is in French or German or Spanish or Urdu or any number of other languages. You can take, using an OpenAI tool called Whisper, you can take that content in with transcribing and efficiency and effectiveness that is beyond compare. There are a lot of transcription tools in the past that flatly sucked, right? They were 90%, and that was better than nothing, but this is like 99%. And if you go to the Whisper examples, you'll hear a guy in Scotland speaking in English, and I can barely understand the guy. And I certainly can't understand all his words, but it nails it. There's another guy speaking in French and it nails it, all to English transcription, by the way. Even a K-pop song that they transcribe, and it shows you both the Korean and English words, and it transcribes it. So this tool called Whisper takes all of that audio content, makes a transcription of it. Now you've got that in your database. You put that wherever you store your files. And now you can say, write me a blog article about that. Write me a summary of that. Maybe if it's a longer, complex thing, write me an ebook outline and then write me an ebook about that. You could also say, write me a blog in English, write me a blog in French, write me a blog in Spanish, right? And really powerfully take what I call industrial scale marketing content and make it into a workflow. And by the way, we're all about putting that in our system. So we don't have to do this individually. We just drop files like the Whisper function. We drop a bunch of files in a folder, and it will then run the transcriptions. And then we can go in and say, I want to run summaries or blogs or ebooks or whatever off of all of these files. And that's the way I want you guys to think, right? It's always a workflow. What's the input? What's the processing? And then what are the potential outputs?
I ask all the guests, what are you doing to stay mentally and physically healthy? Like, what's your habits, if at all? What's your hobby for hobbies your favorite hobbies for when you want to, step out of the daily grind of work? Well,
it's so I've also had a little bit of a health run in, a few years back. And the moment somebody tells you have stage 4 cancer, you kind of wake up and go, oh, yeah, I'm not a fan. But I basically just said, I don't feel it. I don't have any problems. I'm going to carry on and do what I got to do. Luckily, after a year or so of chemo, I'm basically clear. And people ask me all the time, they're like, well, how did that change you? Or how did that? It's like, it didn't change me per se, but it made me more grateful. It made me more aware of our own mortality. Like I didn't want to die yet. And I wanted my death to be random, right? And I wish everybody to have a random death. Knowing that you're marching towards a particular deadline, not awesome. And so, I love to get out, and I when I work out, I like to listen to podcasts. That's a hobby. Every Friday night, I play Battlefield 4 with my brothers and friends. Anybody wants to jump on the Xbox? We love to shoot each other, and it's a complete disengagement. There's no way to think about anything except running for your life and not getting shot, or even worse, stabbed by your friends, and then they replay that animation over and over. So I highly recommend some sort of thing that disengages your brain, because even at night, my brain is still going full tilt.
What about your top 3 outside of ChatGPT, Midjourney, the ones we've mentioned today? You mentioned a few more, Whisper and others. 3 more that people should maybe go out and take a look at, see if there's something there that interests them.
Well, I definitely, again, for people, especially when you're trying to create content or take existing content and leverage it into other areas. So, for example, long form YouTube content, you can use an AI called Munch that will then break those and make them into shorts. And it will even, break in and put in the appropriate wording and allow you to, select different breakpoints. But it'll start with an automation. It's like, here's what I recommend. So Munch will actually take that long form content and start creating social media shorts or TikTok style, reel style videos. Great tool. Another one similar in function called Opus.pro. My friend Jamie Davidson told me about Opus Pro, and it's similar to Munch, but it actually comes up with a score. So you can go to Opus.pro, put in a YouTube, and it will, take maybe 10 minutes to process, depending on the length. And it'll come back and it goes, this score is the best, and here are what the highlights are. Here's the hook, here's the action, and it's quite amazing. And again, for me, leveraging existing assets is hugely important. Mm-hmm. I mentioned 11labs.io. I want to reiterate that. Using voice, having voice read in a more human way, ironically, from written content is extraordinarily powerful. So imagine using ChatGPT to create blogs, but you might even say, I want this to be a narrative blog that's going to be read aloud, and it will then modify the format. And then you have that voice read it. You could, again, start a podcast like 11 Labs did. Their podcast is doing really well because it sounds, well, mostly it's a novelty. I'll be honest with you. That's why people are listening now. but it sounds real enough that people don't feel like they're being tricked. And as long as the quality of the content is good, if it's adequate, it feels good to listen to it without being tricked into dealing with a bot. Honestly, there's so many. The other one I mentioned earlier, but I should reiterate, is Auto GPT. This will change the world when it matures a bit. So I mentioned earlier SOPs, and having the idea of having an SOP written for you or having a checklist written for you, that's cool. But having the Auto GPT, where you can just go into that SOP and you go, you know what, I'm going to make this a bot-driven function. And then the bot just reads the instructions and goes and does it, based on how granular the details are. That's where we're heading. And so Auto GPT's not necessary for people to try to deploy on their own, but certainly something that they can, I think, get some benefits from, if you follow.
How can people find you on the interwebs out there to perhaps reach out to get some more help on this?
Yeah, I think the best way, is if they go to the Twitters. I think that's how they call it, the Twitters. I'm at Steve Simonson. That's also me on YouTube. I think it's also me on Instagram. I don't get into the social media as very often because I don't have the time, frankly, or the interest. But anytime somebody finds me, whether it's on Messenger or WhatsApp or even YouTube or Twitter, then I try to I try to help entrepreneurs. Like, I love entrepreneurs. Not like people say they love cheese pizza. Like, I love entrepreneurs. I want every entrepreneur who's really risking it all. I want to try to help them and pay it forward if I can.
All right, 30-second tip strategy for everybody.
So my primary strategy would be to go in and train a ChatGPT-4 conversation by copying and pasting all the Mid-Journey documentation. So essentially, you go to Mid-Journey, you find the documentation, you copy and paste that to, let's just say, a text file. And then you go to ChatGPT in a singular conversation, and you paste each of those training points. You then find some of the best prompts that you can find on the Mid-Journey Discord, which you can see the format of some of these prompts. They will, they're public unless you click the stealth mode, which I like to use. That's a secondary inside tip. Use stealth to avoid secrets. But for all the people who are doing it in public, take your best prompts that include things like cameras, filters, shutter speed, lighting, settings, environments, and then structure a couple example prompts, copy and paste those in as well. And then you can take a basic prompt like baby penguin, and ChatGPT will turn it into like a mini paragraph of just deliciously rich descriptive prompting. And you paste that into Mid-Journey, and your level of outputs will be absolutely superhuman. And that was one of our first blueprints. That applies not just to Mid-Journey, but to anything. Train that conversation and then keep going back to it. You type in a simple, let's just call it human prompt, and a superhuman prompt comes back.
Marvel or DC superhuman?
Well, you can decide. I'm not getting into any religious wars over here. Yeah.
That's some fighting words for some here.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Well, Steve, this has been great. I guess next time I don't even have to bring you on the podcast. I'll get your voice clone and ask it some questions if it's been trained properly, and then we can have Steve on almost every week without even you physically having to be here. So, but thanks. Seriously, thanks for all this information. I've learned a lot, and I'm gonna be I might try and use some of that to start transcribing our own podcast, because we're paying this other service that I think is too expensive. And so you might have just given me some great tips there, but I know everybody's got some great tips. So thank you very much, Steve, and we'll definitely be in touch. I look forward to seeing you at some of these events this summer. We're going to Bali, and you'll be in Puerto Rico too for $1 Billion Summit.
Correct. Yep.
Man, we're going to be following each other all over the place.
I dig it. Yeah. Well, we can do this AI stuff live, and it is spectacular.
Love it. All right. We'll see you there.
Take care.
Anh chị đang bán hàng trên Amazon. Skyrock cung cấp các dịch vụ dành cho các nhà bán hàng trên Amazon với mức giá cực kỳ ưu đãi như đăng ký brand với USPTO, từ LIệN, từ trên Scout, logistics và warehouse. Xem thêm thông tin chi tiết dưới phần mô tả nhé.